Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, thanks. How are you?
Doing excellent. Thanks for having me on today.
Glad to have you here. Um, yeah, we are live. Everything seems to be working fine. I'm sorry, I'm still new to streaming in general, I feel like, but especially in streaming to Kick and Twitch. I wanted to address your question that you asked me in your email why I was not streaming it on YouTube or if I wasn't streaming it on YouTube. And yeah, basically, I stopped streaming on YouTube. I used to stream on YouTube and I stopped for two main reasons. So one was that YouTube removed a lot of like a couple of my videos for
Hmm.
content warnings because I guess because of some stuff that guests of mine said, and it doesn't seem to matter like what your own position is and if you're arguing against it, but it seems like they're pretty strict about like what your guests are allowed to say. And
Okay.
so
That's
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah, so that was one reason why I would prefer to build like a second uh like have alternatives and have other options. So and that was yeah. And then the second reason is because I think that mainly the people that are watching it on YouTube, when I'm uploading the highlights, they have already mostly seen it. So it's like a dual thing. So our conversation, depending on how it is, I will basically cut it into separate parts if that's even possible. Sometimes it's just not possible. Then I just upload it as is, but there will be no like cuts in between or anything. So I will not like misconstrue what you're saying to let's eat all meat or something like that. So don't worry about it. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So just in general, maybe would you like to introduce yourself?
For sure. What's up, everybody? My name is Natalie. I grew up in the US, the southern US, and I was always a big meat eater, being from the South, lots of barbecue, things like that. And then it was during quarantine when I had extra time, I started learning about the effects animal agriculture has on our world in general, as well as on the animals. So since then, I've made the decision to go into animal advocacy. So now I work for an organization called Pro Animal Future, and we are working on banning factory farming in the US legislatively. So that's kind of the main goal for right now.
And you also have a YouTube channel.
Yes, I do.
Yes. That is how I found you. And I've watched quite a lot of your videos actually in the last
Oh, nice.
in the last week. Um, yeah, so first of all, I would like to clear up a bunch of stuff, like in terms of what would you like this conversation to be like. So I don't know if you've watched any of my content, but usually it has a tendency to become pretty debatey. It can become that, but it definitely doesn't have to be that. But I also usually think that if there is disagreement, it shouldn't be unaddressed, even if we just say agree to disagree or something like that. But yeah, so if you're like, I don't know, if you don't feel comfortable about like, but I saw actually like in your channel, I saw that you're actually really enjoy debating. So yeah, what's your stance on that? Is that still something that is up to date? Are you still someone that is enjoying a healthy debate, or has that changed?
For sure. So, yeah, I basically started my channel mostly debating people on veganism, but whenever I am having those types of conversations, I like to frame it in a specific way. So I don't want it to be you, I want it to be us, like collaborating to get closer to truth. So that's kind of the goal that I enter conversations with. And I would hope that you would be on board for that. If it does become more contentious, that's also fine too. I have a lot of experience with that as well. And I think that you're right, that is generally what people like watching. So I'm happy to do that as well. The reason I've moved away from debates is because I'm less interested in individual advocacy at this point, which means I'm not specifically trying to get people to go vegan anymore, because my organization did a lot of research and found that that wasn't really landing with people. And it works better to break people out of the consumer frame. Like, we shouldn't just think of ourselves as consumers, right? We're so much more than that. We should think more of ourselves as citizens. So asking, how can we create a better world that's fair to animals and humans collectively, as opposed to like this us versus them mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good approach. In terms of what people find interesting to watch, I've basically had this. I regularly have this debate with my viewers and also sometimes with my guests. So basically, this is like a space. This channel or the stream is supposed to be like a space where neither I nor my guest has to worry about being entertaining or being exciting for the viewers. So basically, you can be as boring as you want as long as you think it is interesting. I'm also interested in it. So yeah, we don't have to like be get at each other's throat just to make the public happy. Yeah.
All right. Well, I promise anyone watching, this isn't going to be boring, so stick around.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just like I was thinking about uh opening with something with showing a picture, but then I decided against it because I thought it was kind of in bad taste, and I don't even know if it was like cool to do that on YouTube. So last like the year before last year, I think at the end of 2023, I was in Vietnam, and at some point, I walked around like in the city of Hanoi. I walked for like hours, which I always do when I explore a new city. And at some point, I got into this neighborhood that was like totally local and very much far away from everything that was like touristy. And all of a sudden, I came across like this stand which had like basically not fried, but like a dog that was like basically completely baked, but like as is. Like you could basically see the shape of the dog, like in all of it. Like you could recognize that it was a dog. Um yeah, and I was quite shocked by that. Not like directly shocked. In the first moment, I was like, because it was such an unusual thing to see, right? But in the
Hmm.
second, on second thought, I didn't really feel very bad about it. Probably for reasons that you would probably agree with me more than most meat eaters.
Sure. So, yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, though, because talking about the differences between dogs and farmed animals, or really the similarities, is where I like to start a lot of my conversations on animal rights. Because to me, I come from a scientific perspective of it, which is that, hey, we know that animals feel pain, they suffer, they can form emotional bonds with humans. A lot of people have dogs, and they know that that's true for dogs. Pigs are actually smarter than dogs. So while it is shocking to see a dog like that, we walk by pigs like that all the time and don't even think twice about it because of the way that we've been indoctrinated in society to view some animals as objects and other animals as individuals. So that feeling of shock that you experienced initially, I think you could chalk it up to, oh, it was just unusual. But I would bet that it was a deeper emotional feeling that you actually didn't like to see a dog treated as an object because maybe you've had bonds with dogs throughout your life. Would I be
Yeah,
right that you've ever bonded with them before?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But we've also like I have like a rural background to a certain
Hmm.
extent, whereas my father is from the Middle East, and he's basically like from some remote village in the mountains, and he grew up there, like he spent his childhood there, but then moved into the city when he was like going to school for going to school and working. And but still, like we would go there every year for summer to see my grandparents and to see a lot of other relatives of ours that were still there. And so I was always really close to like that whole farm uh, type uh, animal agriculture.
Hmm.
So not only like sheep, goat, cows, chickens, turkeys. Yeah. So and of course with dogs always. I've had a dog. Like my mother has had a dog, and I've always loved dogs a lot. And I also like cats. Like I I like animals. Like in
Okay.
yeah. But that's
What do
not very
you like
unusual.
about them?
Um, oh, that's a good question. Like, I guess with dogs, it's like you can really bond with them. Like you can have like a very very strong bond with dogs. With cats, it's just like I guess I just like them because they're like, so they like to cuddle and they like to take what they want. Like they want to cuddle with you, then they just come and they cuddle with you, and then they just ignore you for the rest of the day, which I think is kind of charismatic as well, has its charm as well. Like, um,
You're like the girl that only likes the guys that ignore her, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, so I don't know. Like I also had hated some goats because they were like,
Goats are pretty
yeah,
intense.
because
Yeah,
like,
they'll just come
yeah,
after you.
yeah, they can be like, they can be assholes, but yeah, they have like a personality. You can tell that they have
Right.
a personality to a certain extent, right? um
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
one of the things I like to talk about a lot is that when we really get to know animals, we recognize that they are all unique individuals who are having some sort of experience of life. And, I've met a lot of different animals in my life, a lot of different dogs. Some dogs are incredibly sweet, some are really grouchy, in similar ways that humans have all different personalities as well. And
hmm
I think that when we really do have the opportunity to get close to farmed animals and maybe you don't have to kill them after 6 months or a year, then you can really bond with them. I've met sheep that are just like so sweet, and cows are really, soft and lovely creatures. They play like dogs. So I guess my main issue with society is just this arbitrary line that we've created among different species. This species is okay to kill and eat, but this species isn't. But in reality, they all share the same characteristics, especially scientifically, that show that they do deserve moral consideration.
yeah, we will definitely get into that. Like that there will be probably our where our core disagreements will be. um but I wanted to start with that because like I rewatched a couple of my streams, and I'm pretty like, I like to disagree with people. I'm not like confrontation avoidant, like conflict avoidant at all. But what I saw that I did is that sometimes after a certain amount of confrontation, I've had the need for harmony, and then I was basically trying to find a common ground with my opponent, with the person that I was with, not opponent in that sense, but like you know what I mean, you know. And
Yeah.
that sometimes happened to be the two of us having a common enemy or some common thing that we both
Yeah.
dislike. And I don't think that's so good. Like I feel like it shouldn't be that way. So I would prefer to first of all have like all of our common ground to be like positive, and not like us, the two of us, not liking someone, like just maybe just agree on some stuff. That's what I want. And second of all, I wanted to get it out of the way first, like put it there first, just for us to basically have a basis from where we can go, instead of basically using it as a patch later on when we've already disagreed so much. So yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what if we did have a common enemy that was maybe a really destructive industry, right? Like we could look at the factory farming industry in the
Yeah.
world, really specifically the United States. It's controlled by about four corporations, and I
Yeah.
truly think they are evil. So if that were our common enemy, I don't see an issue with that.
No,
But I'm
I
curious
don't
what
see
you think about it.
no, I don't see an issue with us having like a common goal for to fight for, right? Like I can definitely see that happening. I just feel like it is kind of uh it can be done out of like the wish for creating harmony where there is none. Like there can be harmony outside of a certain discussion, outside of a certain conversation, in a different conversation, right? Like in a different, on a different topic and on a different day, maybe even. But to use it like as something um
Like a
to
crutch.
like a crutch for us to get along better and for us to feel better about each other, that kind of feels like, felt at least dishonest to me in the past conversation that I've watched of myself. And I have done it without even really realizing it. But yeah, I just wanted to avoid it. So if you see it, you can also call me out if I do it again.
So
Um,
anytime you agree with me, I'll call you out.
exactly. So I think like the first thing that we can definitely agree about is that there is a double standard when it comes to like goats versus dogs, for example, right?
Mhm.
So and that was also the thing that like I was kind of shocked by how much, because I knew that people were eating dog. I have been to Asia a lot of times. I knew, for example, that I was in China for 3 months and people eat dogs there as well in rural areas. So it was not something that was so uncommon, but I was like pissed at myself at how much I was shocked, because I was like, man, there is no difference between like the goat and the dog. So like
Mhm.
if you're coming from a point of view of some social contract type of argument why you're eating meat, then you could maybe say that okay, a dog, you can have some kind of a social contract with a dog, but I don't believe like that that's the ground, like that's the basis for why we don't kill each other. I don't think that the social contract argument is a very good one. So I shouldn't be
Yeah,
like
it's weak.
yeah. So I think we can have a like we can have a common enemy, which is me in that case. My reaction to the dog is stupid because like it makes no sense, right? So I think that's
Well, I think you're okay, so I think that you've kind of said, "Oh, I have this reaction to the dog. The problem is me," but maybe the problem is society, not you. Maybe your reaction was correct, and we should be having that reaction toward other forms of animal abuse. We've just been so conditioned by our ancestors and our past to stamp that reaction out of us, but maybe that reaction was actually right in the first place.
uh yeah, maybe I guess that's what we're going to talk about, right? I guess that's the whole crux of it. But just like yeah, just in terms of the lack of, I mean, I used to have that reaction to when I first saw a goat being slaughtered, right? Like
Mm,
I've
okay.
told this, I've had another vegan debate with my good friend Elder Drazi, who's vegan as well, and we've had a debate on veganism on this channel as well. And I've told the story before. So when I was like 6 or something, me and my cousins, we was sneaking basically to watch the slaughter happen, and we saw it happen like for the first time when we were like, I don't know, 6, something like that. And it was quite traumatizing, right? Like it was like
Yeah.
we were all sitting there and we didn't say anything, and we had like eyes like this, and we were like, damn, what the fuck did we just watch there? Like it was like watching a horror
Yeah.
movie, right?
Wow.
So yeah.
I think I love that story. I think that's great, and I think it's really telling of the ways that, children come into this world with a sense of innocence and exploration, and they don't like if they see violence like that, they feel that it's wrong, and then everyone else, their parents and whatever, are like, oh, we have to do this, we need to do this to survive, and they justify it to them, and then the kids don't know how to argue with it, right? So they just grow up thinking that that is the case. But I think that listening to your emotions, especially when you're young, is really important, and that they can be a signpost for ethical considerations and how we should live our lives. Do we want to create a world with violence, or do we want to create a world of peace? I would take peace whenever possible, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. But like I don't think I think that ultimately like the source of our morals is definitely feelings. It's not like I don't believe in. I think it a little bit comes. For me, it's like I break it down in a pretty simple way. I think it's coming from feelings, but it's not as a direct one-to-one correlation. So I could have like a similar reaction to seeing my sibling being born, right? Like I could
Maybe.
like birth is like one of the like it can be really violent, right? It can be quite something heavy to digest, especially for a child, right? So like and
Uh,
same goes for like watching an operation being performed on someone who has broken their leg, right? So
yeah, yeah. I guess I should clarify, like when I say emotions are a good barometer, I certainly don't mean they're the only barometer, right?
yeah, yeah,
You also have to look at like the effect that things have in the world as well.
Yeah, so I wouldn't like use that. I don't think it's a good argument in favor or against like what you're seeing there. A child being traumatized by it, or a child being like scared of it, or having a reaction to it. I don't think is like the a good indicator for if it's good or not, right?
Well, it's not a non-zero indicator though. Like if there were a child and they saw someone just stomp on someone's leg and break it and they felt that was bad, like that their reaction would be negative, and also it would be a negative effect on the individual who gets hurt there, right? So when you saw that animal killed, it was you were upset presumably because that animal was forced to suffer and die, and you didn't like the violence of it.
Yeah, so essentially the way I see it is that it is about yourself. So in ultimately, like at some point, like you have mirror neurons. I don't know if you call it that way, but
Yeah, yeah.
I mean even before we knew about mirror neurons, we would already know that it has some, like Adam Smith. I don't know if you've ever read Adam Smith, but in the theory of moral sentiment, he's basically saying that everyone feels something happening when you see something bad happening to somebody else. And I think that if you don't feel it, there's other things that are basically overwriting that feeling. So, for example, if you see like an operation happening on someone, your knowledge of it being necessary, of it uh, being logically and like it being good in a way, that overrides basically can override your feelings about that. But ultimately it comes
Yeah,
from your brain thinking about, oh my god, what if that would happen to me, right?
yeah, we have the empathy to put ourselves in certain situations. And I think a big part of it comes down to desensitization. So, people who end up seeing a lot of blood, like in their line of work, they just sort of get used to it. Or myself, I've seen so many animals being slaughtered that it doesn't really bother me anymore. That doesn't mean I don't think it's wrong. It's that I'm
Yeah,
desensitized because I
exactly.
have to edit so many videos of it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like the first thing we can agree about is that definitely there is a double standard in terms of different species. And
Do
that's
you know
like
the word for that? There's a term. It's
uh
called speciesism.
yeah, I know that word, yeah. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
so I think you
but
could
that's
refer to it as
more
speciesism.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Mm, the second thing I would like to agree on is that all life is precious, right? Like that's at least the way I see it. What do you think about that?
I am not sure. To me, precious, or like when people say all life is sacred, could imply some sort of like religious sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely wouldn't want to tie myself to that. I think that you could say that every individual values their own life.
What I mean is more from your perspective. Like, I think that something in a similar way when I see like a goat dying, like there is obviously the reaction to the brutal nature of death itself, right? But just other than that, even if it would be just like a needle injection where there's, or even like just a pill where there is no violence whatsoever, there is like something where I see, okay, something is gone now, like that has been there before. And
Right.
but I feel like the same way we would feel like when we, and people do feel like that when they see like a huge tree, like I don't know, a 200-year-old tree being cut down. It's like almost, I think like I feel stronger about the tree than I feel about a chicken dying. Just
Okay.
I'm like, oh my god, like this is like a 200 year. This tree has been like here almost like so much longer than any person that is alive right now, like double the amount that the oldest person is right now, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think I would probably go back toward scientific evidence on that. I like trees. There are some trees in my neighborhood they're these beautiful oak trees. They're like 800, 900 years old. Great
Yeah.
trees. They do a lot for the environment. Squirrels live in them. Obviously, they're providing value to our world. but that tree doesn't have a subjective experience of life according to the scientific research right now. If you want to argue against scientific consensus, go for it, but I prefer to look at
Yeah,
evidence.
but wait, before we go there, we will go there. I promise we will
Okay.
go there. And I'm not like trying to prepare a trap for you or anything. But what I think is like what I would like to know of you, if even if you make the difference between, and we will talk about, that will be probably one of the most biggest points where we disagree. But even if you make a difference between plants and animals, like wouldn't you still attribute value to that tree's life, like compared to like a rock?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people miss about veganism is they think that vegans kill more plants, but animal agriculture is inherently inefficient. So it takes 10 to 15 times more plants to feed an animal and then eat the animal. So even if you do care about plant sentience and minimizing it, that still points toward veganism.
You don't want to, you don't want to miss a chance to make to score a point for veganism, I guess.
It's what I do.
I mean, I feel like
I mean, I think it's important. I think it's a really important distinction because people don't understand what animal farming is really like and how inefficient it really is. When we're talking about feeding a world of 10 billion people, we would do it so much more efficiently if we switched to a plant-based food system. And
but
I
I'm
think
not
that that's a really important point.
I wouldn't even disagree with that point, but I don't feel like it has a lot to do with my question. Like I feel like it is, I feel like you are like trying to sneak in like an argument for veganism, where I'm just asking you a really simple question. Like it's a very and I don't even disagree with you on your point there. Like I do believe that if you process plants through animals, and then that there is less, basically you have to kill more plants in order to create the same amount of calories. But
Mhm.
uh, but that has nothing to do with the point that you can still value uh,
Sure. And yeah,
trees,
I guess I
right?
should clarify, like when I have conversations like this, a big part of my mind is on the audience too.
Yeah,
So, if anyone's watching it and thinking about like it's a really common argument against veganism, like, oh, plants feel pain. So I like to address it for
we
anyone
will go
watching, not
there.
just you specifically.
No,
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
that is definitely one of my arguments, that and we will go there. But I would just I
Well, I
just want
just
to
debunked it, so I don't know where it would go,
know, how
where we
did
would
you
go with
debunk?
it.
Wait, what did you debunk?
I debunked the idea that vegans kill more plants. So, like, if plants feel pain, then we would agree that veganism is better because it kills fewer plants.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, if you're going to use plants
But
feel
that
pain against
assumes,
veganism, it's
but
not actually an argument against veganism.
that assumes that you can just count up the amount of value of life basically in a quantifiable way, that we could just like, let's say you agree with me. So basically what you're saying is, you're assuming that you agree with me, right? You say, let's say that,
No.
no, in you, that was your argument, right? You're saying, even if,
Oh, I'm saying if I take the position that plants feel pain. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
even
But
if,
I'm not saying that you were saying that in this moment.
no, no, I know, but so what you're saying, the argument you're making right now is the following. You're saying, even if I would grant you that plants are also sentient, and that plants' life is as valuable as animals' life, right? Even then, in
Mhm.
terms of numbers, you would kill more plants by doing animal agriculture, right? But
Yes.
that presumes that there is like that I am thinking that there is, we just have to count the amount of lives, and then come up, and then basically the less lives we kill, the less damage we have done, right? That I am somehow,
Or I was going off your point that you said that all life is precious.
I mean, yeah, there is an inherent
Okay.
we attribute, that's basically the only thing I was saying, like so your argument only works if I also think that there is some mathematical calculation that I can do, where one plant's life equals one chicken life, one, like one piece of grass. But that's not the way I'm, like that's not the way I'm thinking. So uh,
Okay. So how are you thinking about it?
we can go there, but I mean, the way I see it is goes even further than plants. Like everything that lives, by definition, is interacting with the world, right? That's what living is basically. So we can tell that something is living if it's interacting with its world. Would you agree with that?
You mean like if it's responding to stimuli and such? I guess
Yeah, yeah.
the issue
For
I would have with
example,
that
it could be a
is that we
response.
have
It could be a response, but it could
right.
also be just something that it does from or in and of, like from itself, right? That it just becomes
Sure, yeah,
active.
the reason that I disagree with like the fact that something interacting with the world means it's alive is because we have a lot of things that interact with the world that aren't sentient, right? Like
But we're not
computers
there
and cell
yet.
phones.
But we're not there yet.
They're
We're
having a
just
reaction to the world, but they're not sentient. So I would rather come at it from the idea of sentience, if
but
that would be okay with you.
I no, because no, that wouldn't be okay, because I think it's really important. If you're talking about sentience, then you're basically saying that in distinction to something that is only living, right? So
Yeah.
when you say that animals are sentient and plants are not sentient,
Mhm.
then you're saying that because you think that plants are but you still think that plants are living beings, right?
Yeah, like
You
so
still
once
think
again,
that plants
it's
are
not
alive, right?
about what I think, it's about what the biology says, and biology
What do
is
you
clear
think?
that like,
What do
yeah,
you think
plants are
that biology
alive, but
says?
they're not sentient.
What do you think
Biology
that biology says?
says that
I learned in
that
primary
plants are
school.
alive and they
Yeah.
can respond to their environment,
Yes.
but that they don't have neurons or pain receptors or the
Sure. But
characteristics
that's not
that
what we're
would
talking
prove
about.
sentience.
Exactly. But that's not what we're talking
Right.
about. But we can talk about that also. But like at this point, I'm just trying to explain to you what my framework, but what where I'm coming from, because you asked me if I like what my framework is, and so I ask you, do you think that plants are alive? Right. That
Yep.
everything that is alive is this, but by definition, something that is interacting with its environment. Right. So
But
plants.
I disagree with the interaction with environment part because there are many things that interact with our environment that aren't alive.
Okay, how would you see that like a cell is alive or dead, or a plant is alive or dead? How do you see that?
Yeah, you can look at it like if I'm pretty bad at having houseplants, so when I stop watering them,
Yeah.
they die, they become
Now, how
brown,
do
they
you know
stop
that they die? How
growing.
do you know that they're dead?
Right, they're brown and crumble up, and no
But
matter how much I water them, they're not going to come back to life.
yeah, so they're not doing anything anymore, right? They stop doing
Yeah,
shit.
so they stop responding to
They
their
stop
environment. So I
interacting with their environment. So they stop
yes.
taking in the water. They stop like moving. They stop doing a bunch of stuff. So that's what we basically, that's how we define that something is alive. Like where we see, and now you can basically take this definition of being alive and project that onto like computers and stuff like that, which is definitely a thing that you can do. But these definitions have existed also before computers were there, and we can now basically make the case: are computers alive? Sure, we can talk about that, right? But it still doesn't invalidate our understanding of what alive is, like for thousands of years, right? Like we know what alive means. Like alive means it's doing shit.
Yeah. I guess so how does this relate
Okay,
to
just
whether
can
animals should
we?
have rights?
We will go there. We will go there. So because you asked me
Okay.
like where the what my framework is. So I look at everything that is alive, and if everything that is alive is defined by its doing shit, i.e., is interacting with its environment, I believe the only way it can actually do so is by knowing, by having a will to reproduce and survive, as well as knowing what is good for it and what is bad for it immediately, like in a very direct way. So when I see a plant going towards light, or a carnivore plant eating like a fly, like I'm seeing impulses that are positive, and you can also see impulses that are negative when you cut off something, and when you, so you can see basically reactions to the things that happen to be also bad or good for their survival and reproduction, right?
Like if you put a cigarette into a Venus flytrap, it's still
Yeah.
going to clamp down, but that's not good for its survival.
Yeah, it can, obviously you can kill it, right? Like
Yeah,
obviously it can be wrong, right?
sure.
But it has basically inputs like sensory the possibility to for some things that are good for it and for some things that are bad for it, not for all things that are bad for it, right? We don't have like an extra sensory input that shows us when guns are pointed at our head, right? But we have like sensory input for cuts on our skin, or like, you know, like, so there is, I think that's basically the precondition, like that's the condition for life, is to have some form of pain and reward, like some sort of system that allows you to distinguish what is good for me, what is bad for me. I think otherwise, like, these all of these interactions that we define as life would not make any sense. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
So in my you can disagree with that and we can talk about that, but in my framework, it's not only about plants, it's not only, it's like also the cells are feeling pain, quote unquote, right? So
The plant cells.
all cells, right? So there is a pain reward system in everything that is alive. So that's why your argument for me would not make any sense, because I would never ask you to minimize to count the amount of lives that are dead and then compare these two states and tell you which one is better. So I would never tell you, hey Natalie, you're killing so many plants, like you're killing 100,000 plants, and in that other scenario where you're only killing 50,000 animals. I would never make this calculation, right?
Well,
Because
if you're saying that you do think that all life is precious, then it sounds like you would be making those calculations. But I mean, we could
no,
just
no,
start from where you
no.
are and move on in the discussion because I feel like we've spent a lot of time on this.
How would I make this calculation? Like I would never, like, because it's an infinite amount of lives that are dying all the time, and an infinite amount of things that are dying all the time and that are being killed all the time. It's basically infinite amount in both cases, whether we eat plants or whether we eat animals. It's, for me, it's no difference. There is an infinite amount of lives that are being that are gone either way. Do you see my
But it's
point?
not
Like, you don't have
Not
to agree.
really,
You don't have
because
to
I think
agree.
we can put numbers on a lot of things. Like if we look at the numbers of animals that are killed every year in the world for food, it's around 80 to 100 billion. And then if we completely stopped killing animals,
Yeah.
that number, which I don't think is going to happen, just to be clear, but then that number would be zero. So it wouldn't be this infinite number unless we
No,
keep
no. If you adapt
breeding and exploiting
if you
animals.
adapt my framework, so if you adapt my frame, if you just view it through my lens, through the way I'm seeing it, I would not
You're
tell
seeing
you.
it as infinite.
So you basically thought that I was going to make the argument that because plants are sentient, that you
But they're
try
not
to,
sentient.
sorry, if I think that plants lives are as valuable as animals lives,
Right.
that I would make the argument against you that, yeah, farming plants is as bad. And then you said, yeah, even if I would grant you that,
Sure.
with animal farming there is more plants dying. That
Yeah.
was your argument, right?
I was just responding to I was presuming that some people in the audience might think that was an argument against veganism, so I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to clear it up
Okay.
right off the bat
and
so we can move
and
along.
that would not be my argument. That's what I was trying to
Okay,
explain.
so
Like that argument you
okay.
countered, I would never make that argument because of where I'm coming from.
So what are maybe we could get into your arguments.
Yeah, that was my, like, I basically, yeah, I tried to lay it down to you. So my argument is that so I have basically two contentions with it. So I believe that you also um don't think that you also, your rule for sentience being the criterion for the value of life is, I think, inconsistent. That's my first argument.
Well,
And then,
you don't know how I think about sentience yet.
yeah, I think
You haven't asked me.
yeah, I know, I'm assuming it. uh
Okay, well,
I'm presuming it, yes. And
I can clarify. I'm happy to
you
clarify.
can we can go through it. um and the second argument I have is that the thing that I laid out to you like a few minutes ago, I don't think that we are able to reduce the amount of valuable life, and that, like, I'm not seeing any way through my lens, no harm is reduced by me not eating meat. There is no moral harm reduced by me not eating meat, because to me, always an infinite amount of life is being destroyed, and always the same, like, because it's infinite, it's always the same amount of pain that is being exerted by us, basically,
But that's just a bit
eating.
detached from reality, right? So like if you're saying,
We
"Oh,
can
I'm going
talk
to
about
eat
that.
50
Which one?
animal."
Which
Well,
one do you want to go first?
first let me define veganism first, because I'm sure there's vegans in the audience that are like, "We
Sure,
need to know what we're talking about before we even go into
sure.
this." So veganism is a ethical philosophy against the exploitation of animals as far as practicable and possible. So that means if you're in a survival situation, right, literally the only way you're going to survive is by killing an animal, then that's different morally than when I'm in the US, first world country. I can go to the grocery store, I can buy Beyond Meat instead of meat. That's obviously a very different situation than one of survival. So that's what veganism, for me, it comes down to a few different scientific principles. The first, like I mentioned, is that animals are sentient, feel pain. The second is that we don't need to eat them to survive and thrive. And the third is that animal farming is causing a lot of issues in our world today, from pandemics to antibiotic resistance to ocean dead zones, deforestation, habitat destruction, species extinction. All a huge host of problems that our world is facing come back to our relentless pursuit of animal farming. So that's where I'm coming from. As far as sentience, I think of it as a scale. And I'm not sure if this is
I,
correct, but like, let's say we have
I
humans
think, Natalie,
here, right?
sorry to interrupt you. I think we should just go a little bit more structured way, maybe. I think
Okay.
it's easier for the both of us. I would like to just make one thing that I forgot to say at the beginning. I feel like
Sure.
we should not talk about negative externalities of eating meat. At least not,
Why?
because I think that it is not our core disagreement. There is, I think, it's in. Let's say all of the negative externalities you can think of in terms of meat. Like, when I say negative externalities, I'm talking about like climate change, workers suffering like psychologically, whatever. Like X, you can name a bunch of stuff, right? Like, if we would eliminate those with AGI tomorrow, and none of those exist anymore, right? Uh, you would still be against it, and I would still, and I, even though all of these things exist, I am still in favor of it. So it makes no sense
So
whatsoever for the two of us to talk about this, because it's basically just an engineering problem that would not solve our disagreements. Do you know what I mean?
Um, sort of, but I feel like once again you're kind of making an assumption about where I stand, right? Like a huge part of why I got into veganism was those sorts of issues, was because we're facing them.
But
Like
let's say
I
they're
do
all
care
gone
about the
tomorrow.
slaughterhouse workers.
But let's say they're gone tomorrow. Would you stop being vegan?
Well, then we would still have the issue of animal suffering and unnecessary
Exactly.
torture.
Exactly. And that's what we should only talk about, I think. Like, that's the
Why? I mean, doesn't your audience have a right to know all the other problems
oh
with consuming animal products? They might
I
not know
would
it.
I
Like, I
would
had no idea, right? I wish someone had told me that, like, oh, we could actually really help the world by making this small change in our life. I wish someone had told me about that. So I almost
I
think it's
thought
unfair to not
I
bring up
thought
those
you know
things.
by now that I don't care about my audience, but also I don't have an audience yet. So right now it's
No one's watching? Oh,
no.
no.
I mean, we have like 3 people watching on Kick and one
Okay.
person
Yeah.
watching on Twitch, but doesn't matter. Like, I if you want to have the space, like, to talk about this, I don't think that I don't think that this is a very interesting conversation to have, because it is an engineering problem. Like, I can see why you, from your standpoint, you would want to convince people to with these means. Like, you would want to convince someone to be vegan at all cost, right? Like, you don't care why someone becomes vegan.
Well, not necessarily, because that being said, like when people do become vegan just for climate change or just for health, then they're a lot less likely to remain vegan without that ethical
Sure,
component of
sure,
animals.
sure.
So
So
I
I
think that that's
understand.
important too.
I understand why you, yeah, why it would be, it is a compelling argument to become vegan because of that. Like I'm not saying,
Yeah.
like I'm not trying to dismiss your arguments in terms of like that's not important, let's forget about that. Like but for our conversation, it is totally not irrelevant, according to me, because we don't would still have a disagreement even if we would fix those in like 5 minutes. And just from an intellectual standpoint, I think the actually interesting conversation would be the ethics of eating meat without all of the externalities, and that's where we will have, because all of the other things, it's an engineering problem. Like I could sit here now and I could make the case for how it is possible to do all of these things without these negative externalities. Like I could make the case for how it's possible to kill animals without climate, like without polluting the climate, blah 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 blah. Like that's an
Wow.
I could try to make that case even if it's like not right now possible, right?
Sure. Well, I think the
Like
reason that
the
it's not possible is because of the amount of space that
no,
animals take
I'm
up and the
sorry.
amount of resources they need. So it actually is impossible to
I am sorry.
not have animal farming inefficiently.
I'm sorry. What I actually mean is it is if I would think that, I could make the case like that could be a discussion you could have with someone. On I'm sure you've had that discussion with people, right? Where you basically were discussing the facts of the matter, the engineering problem of negative externalities in meat production, right? But I don't think that I'm a good person to talk about this. I don't think that I'm
Right.
and I don't think that for me it is especially interesting. Like I could make another case where I say there is more important things to care about, right? And then we could fight over what's more important, like the industry or spaceship rocket or all the animals on the planet, right? Like we could then compare carbon footprints and blah 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 blah. But that's not an interesting like. I think you know what I mean. Like when I'm saying I'm not the right person to talk about that. Like that's not the thing that interests me. Like I'm interested
Gotcha. So
in
maybe you're not as well versed on like climate change and stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
and I could even like to my knowledge, I think you're probably right about most of the things that you're saying.
Once again, it's not about me being right. It's about looking at the evidence that we have.
But that's
So
that's the
the
same.
all the scientists are saying like, hey, animal farming's a problem. We need to have high
Yeah,
income
and
countries really cut back on it if we want to meet our
and
climate goals.
and I agree. I probably agree with most of the things that you're saying. But to me, the intellectual conversation to that I would like to have is a moral and ethical one because
Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
we can keep it focused on morals and ethics. That's fine. I just, I do like to at least tell people that there are a
you
lot
can.
of problems with meat production, not just the ethical stuff, just to be clear, but we can focus on that if you want.
Yes, and I agree that there is a lot of problems with meat production.